Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our Family Friday webinar series. My name is Karina Aguilera Dickens, and I am the Assistant Director for Parent and Family Programs in Campus Life. For today's webinar, we've invited two campus teams to tell you more about Emory's education abroad opportunities and how your student can earn college credit while studying in another country. All right. As always, all of our webinar and program information is always available at family.emory.edu. The webinars page also includes a link to the YouTube playlist of previous webinar recordings, so you are always welcome to view past webinars from a fall or previous semester. Recordings are available after the webinar's conclusion. Today, we have three wonderful staff members from the College of Arts and Sciences and the Goizueta Business School who work full-time to support students in their studies abroad. As a reminder, for the audience, please utilize the question and answer function of the webinar to ask questions. And we will answer them in the Q&A portion of the webinar at the end of the webinar. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Laura Boudon to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're glad you're here today. I'm Laura Boudon, as Corinna mentioned, and I'm the new Assistant Dean and Director of Education Abroad in Emory College. I'll be joined also by Meg Sandstrom, who is not on the call yet, but will be here. Soon. Corinna, do you want to start us off on the presentation? Thank you so much. So some of the topics we're going to cover today that we thought would be helpful for you to know is to begin with what is education abroad and the benefits of studying abroad for your student. We also want to tell you a little bit about health and safety and what are some of the things that Emory University does to keep your students safe while abroad. We'll talk about visas. We'll talk specifically about some of you who may have students who are Oxford continuees and what that may look like for them. We also want to give you a snapshot of the upcoming summer 2025 programs in Emory College. We'll speak also about scholarships and then semester programs. And then the semester program portion, we'll divide it between college programs and then a Goizueta Business School options. And I do want to give a chance to my counterpart from the business school to introduce himself before we go any further.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Declan Clear. I'm the Director of International Programs for the BBA program here at Goizueta Business School. I'm from Dublin, Ireland originally, and I've been working here at Emory for 3 years running this program. So really looking forward to your questions today, and thank you all for taking the time to come to this session. So I know Laura's got the main slides, and then we'll run through some stuff on the BBA program. We're looking forward to your questions and answers. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you so much. And we'll finish up with some tips about how to support your student who may be interested in study abroad. And then we will, of course, end with questions. Next slide, please. So just to start off with what education abroad is, we all think of education abroad as this exciting, transformative experience. But we do want your students and you to remember that it is education abroad. So just a focus on the study component. I think it's really important for students to remember that these are academic experiences and that they are taking classes while they are abroad. By definition, education abroad is a transformative experience for students. It really helps them to become more global citizens. It helps them to gain cross-cultural skills, professional skills. And education abroad could look several different ways in terms of the academic component. So it could be taking courses at an Emory-affiliated university or program. It could be taking an Emory class with an Emory faculty member, but doing so, in France, in Italy. You'll see some of the exciting destinations that we have as options for students. And another thing that study abroad could include would be an internship abroad or participating in experiential learning while abroad. Next slide, please. So the benefits of education abroad are really numerous, and in the field there is a lot of different benefits that have been studied. And here we chose a particular IES abroad study to speak specifically about some of the benefits of education abroad. Education abroad really gives students certain skills, and some of them are soft skills that employers are looking for. And obviously, students are able to increase their language proficiency. As we've already mentioned, their cross-cultural understanding. They really grow also kind of personally in their flexibility, their adaptability to new situations. One of the things we know about education abroad is that things don't always go right. And so it really helps students to stretch themselves in that way. Students who study abroad do have higher starting salaries when they join the workforce, and generally are able to secure positions faster. And then education abroad is something that looks really good on graduate school applications, and having that access for maybe if you're studying abroad on a faculty-led program, having access to an Emory faculty member for a month, that faculty member gets to know your student just so much more than than just being in class 3 times a week on campus in Atlanta. So these are just a few of the benefits of education abroad, but we do know that there are others as well. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we wanted to touch on health and safety because this is obviously really important. There is nothing more important to Emory than the health and safety of your students abroad. So Emory University, across the institution, all travelers from Emory have access to international SOS insurance, and we share information with students about this information, and students register with this provider and are able to receive alerts, for the country that they are in. And ISOS has a really great track record of responding to emergency situations. For our summer programs, and this is specifically for the college has decided to add an additional insurance starting this coming summer. And students will simply be enrolled in that insurance and will be given information about that insurance as soon as they are enrolled. But we know that we're doing that, so we wanted to tell you a little bit about that. If you know that your student takes prescription medication, we want to make sure that maybe you're helping your student to make sure they have what they need while they're traveling, because we obviously want them to take care of themselves, in all the ways that they need to. If vaccinations are required for the particular country that your student is studying abroad in, then your student is going to have to get those vaccinations before departure. I can maybe say specifically, we had a program last summer going to Senegal, and having the yellow fever vaccination is a requirement to enter the country. And so we share that information with students, what is required, and program directors will be doing that as well. But we want to make sure that students are doing those things so that they're ready to study abroad and can enter the country of their program. For students who are participating, so as we said, there's summer faculty-led programs at Emory. But then there's, of course, our summer options, which we'll discuss a little bit more. But any student that is participating in a program where there's an exchange partner or a provider that is behind that program, the student then would be receiving information from Emory College or the Goizeta Business School, and then also receiving information from either the exchange partner or the program provider. So we want to make sure that there's kind of two entities, in that situation that are working with your student. And I will finally say that Emory is working with U.S. Department of State travel advisories. So Up until this week, we could not have students studying abroad in mainland China, because until this week, China was at level 3, according to the US Department of State. That level has just come down this week to level 2. So China, as an example, will now become an option again for students in fall of 2025. And I'm going to turn over the presentation now to my colleague, Meg Sundstrom, who's just joined us. So thank you, Meg. Take it away.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So if you'd go ahead to the next slide. Hi, everyone. My name is Meg Sundstrom. I am the Assistant Director of Education Abroad. And the reason I was late was actually because I was helping some students with their visas. So this is something that obviously students are concerned about from the offset. For semester programs, every country is different. But some countries may require that students travel to another city to visit a consulate. There will be fees. This is included in our program budgets. And sometimes the paperwork is a bit complicated. Again, why I was just spending some time with some students going over their paperwork. It can be a very stressful process, but I always try to remind students that hundreds upon thousands of students have done this in the past. We will get through it. Our office is here to help troubleshoot, but we're not visa experts. So we can't apply for the visa for the most part on behalf of the student, and it's ultimately the student's responsibility to get their visa for semester programs. For some programs, in the summer, visas are required. So, for example, for the Tibetan studies students going to India, but our office assists in that visa process. And some of you may have heard about the ETIAS, which is happening in Europe. They haven't given us the official start date for when it's going to start, but it's expected to go into effect in January, and it's going to cost about $7. We don't quite know what it looks like yet. I think it'll be online, but just wanted to make sure you all knew we are aware, and we will be ready to assist students however we can when that comes up this summer. Next slide. So to address our Oxford continuees, again, this is for college, in the college. So for the summer, they are eligible to go on our programs after their freshman year. For semester programs, they are eligible the second semester of their sophomore year. So typically when an Oxford continuee goes the second semester of their sophomore year, they are either graduating a semester early, or if they've completed all their Oxford requirements and all they need is credit hours. Those are the two scenarios where students go in their second semester. Some of the forms are slightly different for Oxford students. Their advisor will talk them through that process. It's not anything like more complicated. It's just a little bit different. For example, who the academic advisor who signs their forms is. And also for our students who are going out, we usually have a larger number going out in the spring, and we'll actually do our orientation for semester students. We'll go out to Oxford to give them orientation. So next slide. So here's kind of a list of our summer 2025 programs. These programs are going to open on December 16th. And this just gives you an idea of where we're going. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, so yeah, the applications open on December 16th. Some programs are more competitive than others. So for example, the London School of Economics program for economics students fills up pretty quickly. The NBB program in Paris also does. Generally, our applications are rolling, but for some of the more competitive ones, there might be additional questions. The students will complete an application on our website. It's pretty straightforward. If they need any help, they can always reach out to their advisors. They will be reviewed on a rolling basis, and that likely will not start until January. So if your student puts their application in on December 16th, for example, they're not going to be hearing back from our office until January. Once a student has been accepted into their program, they will be put into something called provisional acceptance, and they have 2 weeks to make their deposit in order to secure their spot. That is a $350 deposit, And if they are not able to make that payment in that amount of time, they will lose their spot to another student, especially for the competitive programs. So it's really important to know that that $350 needs to be paid pretty quickly after they've been accepted into their program, and that's securing their spot. They will have orientation with their program director before departure. Go ahead. Yeah. So for our summer scholarships, there is going to be a new process with financial aid for this summer. They are still working out the details on that, but I think that it's going to be really great. So we're excited to unveil that information as soon as we have it. There's also the Gilman Scholarship. So the Gilman Scholarship is specifically for Pell Grant recipients, and that can be a really great option for students to apply for. I believe the application deadline, Laura, do you know what the application deadline is for Gilman? Remember, March 15th?
It's generally early March. I don't have
Yeah,
this.
early March. Yeah. We also have the Eagles Abroad Scholarship, and this is administered through our office. So this is an additional scholarship that students can apply for. There are going to be two deadlines. There's going to be a priority deadline and then a general deadline to know when, so the students will know when they'll be notified of whether or not they've been accepted. So that's an additional scholarship they can apply for. I will note too, I always recommend to students that they look at their demographics, what they're majoring in, where they come from, and look for scholarships specific to them. So I'll give you the example. I'm from a small island outside of Seattle. If there happens to be a scholarship, I studied French for people studying French from Bainbridge Island, Washington. There could be a specific scholarship out there for me. So I always recommend that students look based on their demographics. Sometimes for specific majors, there may be, it could be from where they're from, something about their identity, and that can be a great way to look for scholarships. Courtesy students can also use their scholarship over the summer for tuition. Next slide. So these are our semester programs. These are all the countries that we have programs in. Some of our programs actually travel to multiple countries during the semester, but this gives you an idea of where in the world our students are going during the semesters. Next, yeah. So there are basically three different types of semester programs. So there are exchanges and direct enroll. So exchanges are when there's a one-to-one ratio between the students who come to Emory and the students who go out. So an example for the college for exchanges is the University of Amsterdam. So we send 4 students and then they send us 4 students. Direct enroll is very similar in that they're going to one of our host universities or going to one of our partnered host universities, but it is not a reciprocal agreement. So they are just direct enrolling in the school. What these have in common is that they will oftentimes have 2 applications. So first, they're going to fill out the Emory application and be accepted by Emory. And then they'll fill out an application for their program. I will say that with both exchanges and direct enroll, it does require a little bit more autonomy on the part of the students because they are oftentimes dealing with the university directly in that other country. I think that it's actually a really great exercise in learning. I think that students gain so much independence in this process. And it is also kind of more of an immersive experience. They're going to be around more students from that country and other international students. We also have program providers, which are great. This is more of oftentimes can be more of an American classroom experience. There is also oftentimes 2 applications here where they're applying to both us and the program. It still requires diligence on the student's part, but there are even more staff to help them out. I think for students who have had like little to no travel experience, sometimes a program provider program is going to give them the amount of support that they really need. So for the process for applying, for semester programs, they are required to meet with both their education abroad advisor and their academic advisors. They have to get course approvals as part of their application process, and we talk them through how to do that. And they complete the Emory application by the deadline. The deadlines are generally March 1st for fall and academic year programs and October 1st for spring programs. It's important to note that some programs may have slightly earlier deadlines, so students should ask their advisor during advising about that. So I'll give you the example again of University of Amsterdam. Because of when we have to get information to them, oftentimes that deadline has to be a couple weeks earlier than the October 1st deadline that we have for most of our programs. For eligibility, students have to be a second semester sophomore or higher. They're required to have a 3.0 GPA and also be in good academic and disciplinary standing.
Hey, Meg, thank you for that. I'm just going to hop on and talk a little bit about the BBA exchange program. So this spring we're sending out over 170 students on our program. So we have quite a competitive pool. We operate based on exchange. So all BBA students who apply can be placed in a program, but a student's first choice placement is never guaranteed. Just so you're all aware. There are some eligibility requirements. So a student must be in good standing. Students must have a GPA of 3.0 and maintain that before going abroad in the semester. We grade audit everyone before going abroad. Students will have needed to take at least a couple of the BBA core classes before going abroad. Students must not have any incompletes on their transcripts, and they need to be enrolled full-time within the BBA program. Our application process, very similar to the college. They need to have an academic plan made with their academic advisor. They also are required to write an essay. Applications for spring open around mid-August and close in early September. And our applications for fall open in mid-January and close in early February. In total, we have 48 partnerships with universities in over 32 different countries. And yeah, just a little bit more about it because I've seen some of the questions come in. Obviously, I'll address some more of those. But students who go to these schools, it's an exchange program. Meg talked about the different types of abroad programs, but these are what are considered equivalent business schools to Emory around the world. So students can find course equivalency here and take BBA core requirements while abroad through our exchange program. Next slide, please. And here's a list of our partner universities. As you can see, we have quite a high number, and as I said, every student who wishes to apply to go abroad through the BBA program has always got an offer. It may not be their very first choice, but students are allowed to put down up to 3 options on their application. And so far, we've never had a student who's not been made an offer for a study abroad program. So because we operate on an exchange, we don't have unlimited places at every university. So, a lot of it is dependent on how many students we get in. So our numbers fluctuate each year, but that's just a little bit about our program and some of our options. And hopefully by next fall, we haven't announced them yet, but we should have a couple of more new exciting programs for the students to consider applying to. Slide. And yeah, I think Laura and I can kind of talk about this, but supporting your students abroad, just make sure to messages to reinforce is to check their email while they're abroad. I mean, this is a really big thing for our students when they go abroad. Stuff about if they're away for a semester, we need to contact them about enrollment or things that are going on at Emory, making sure they're up to date on their immunizations. Patience is key. It's all right to be nervous, make sure, and then the important questions for your students to ask and for you to ask is, do you need a visa for your country you're going to? And for the most part, it's a yes. And some countries have, you can do the visa online. Some countries it's quite a more complicated process, which involves a lot of traveling to and from consulates. So it's important to know that ahead of time. And then just, making sure they your kids stay on top of their deadlines before going, for sure. Next slide. Yeah. So I think we're opening it up to questions. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, thank y'all so much. That was really incredible. And now we have plenty of time for questions, and the questions are rolling in. So we will try to get to as many of them as possible, but in the event that we don't get to all of them, we have an email up here, abroad@emory.edu. Declan, if you want to put your information in the chat as well, and then we have the family@emory.edu email as well for questions. But we will just jump straight into the Q&A. So we actually received a couple of questions to the family@emory.edu email prior to this webinar. So I'm going to start with those. So the first question is, what classes are available to my student in each program? Very broad question. And what if the classes my student needs do not line up with the country they want to study in?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. We do have a list of pre-approved classes on our website that they can look at. If the courses that they want to take are not available in the country they want to go to, they have an option at that point. They can take maybe some more general classes that they need or want. But if if they don't have like the specific major, they're not going to be able to take courses there.
Thank you. Can a student study abroad at an institution that is not listed? And how does Emory support the planning process in that?
Want to take this one, Laura?
Sure. So Emory College, I'm speaking specifically about the college, does have a petition process for students who would like to pursue opportunities that are not currently Emory College approved opportunities. Part of the process, the first step in the process would be to meet with me. And so definitely, if that's the situation for your student, have them reach out to me. The committee meets once a month during the academic year. So there's only like certain dates on which the committee will meet to consider petitions. And it is a regular occurrence that petitions are denied. The Education Abroad Committee is made up of Emory College faculty. And, I think it's really important. We started this conversation with my saying that education abroad is an academic experience. And I think this kind of speaks to it, that we want the courses and the programs that our students are doing abroad to be on the level that we expect for programs that are approved by Emory. As a reminder, and we didn't get into this for the Emory College programs, for the semester programs, the courses actually come back as Emory credit. So those are actually Emory grades on an Emory transcript. And that's why it's just so important that the academic piece of these courses and of these programs be reviewed by Emory faculty. So if you know your student is looking to do a program that is not an Emory program, have them reach out to me, and definitely petition early, I would say, so the students can make plans. And did you want to speak, Declan, about the business school process?
For the business school, students can, go on an abroad program, that's not one of our partners. However, unfortunately, would not be able to transfer back credits. It would just be, essentially taking a gap semester, or, trying out something different, because the way we work with our exchange program is that every school has to be approved by our education committee and reviewed, and it's just unfortunately not possible to then just like find a school and go, because we don't operate we don't have that as our system. Our system is when we send your kids out, we want kids from these schools coming in. We operate purely on exchange. So, if your son or daughter were interested in that, I would highly advise, potentially looking through at the college's programs, especially if they're joint major kids, because they can potentially get college requirements fulfilled. Is that correct, Laura? With some of those? Yeah, perfect.
Thank y'all so much. Um, this is a kind of a good segue into a couple other questions that we have. Are study abroad programs mainly for taking classes? And I know Laura, you touched on this. Are there project-based or research opportunities as well?
So I would say the majority of our programs in the college are specifically for taking classes. If a student wants to do research or an internship, they have to basically take a research or an internship class while they're on a semester program. That being said, we do have the Pathways Center here on campus, which does support students who are looking to do international internships and research.
Thank you. Um, so the final question that we had received via email was the BBA program also holds internships abroad. Are there similar opportunities for non-BBA students?
I think that's the same answer, which is that
Great.
Pathways Center. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. We will move into the Q&A function of the webinar. Can you discuss options that pre-med students have explored to get the best of courses as well as healthcare internationally? I believe those are two separate questions. So one question about international healthcare and the other one about the pre-med student opportunities.
Yeah,
Uh,
so you want to
Go
go ahead?
ahead. No,
No,
you
of
can go
course.
ahead.
So definitely we have a number of pre-med students who study abroad in Emory College. And what I was just speaking about the classes coming back as Emory credit, that's actually specifically important for pre-med students because it shows up as Emory classes and Emory credits as opposed to credits, from another institution or possibly an institution abroad. So do you want to mention that? But really pre-med students could really consider the majority of our programs. It's just really about thinking where would the student like to go, and also to Meg's point earlier about what program is going to provide the student with the classes that they're looking for. And if the student is specifically looking for a program that is focused on health, we have some summer programs that are focused specifically on health, and then we have some semester programs that are also specifically focused on global health that would be actually a great fit for a pre-med student.
Thank you. Are there programs where students can have international service opportunities along with language immersion? So I think that's an added layer to the academic portion.
I can speak to that if you'd like. So, I mean, I would say that the majority of our programs are in some way engaged in the community where the program is taking place, and that can look a variety of different ways. There will be some programs where service learning is a particular component of the program, and that would be kind of listed in the program description. Obviously, there's service learning opportunities that fall outside of the education abroad space, and that would not be, for academic credit, and that could be like an outside experience that the student is doing separately. But if the student wants service learning to be part of the education abroad, then that's something they could bring to like their search of like what is the best program for their specific interests.
And I'm going to add, just because I recently got the opportunity to visit some of our programs in Italy, and they know that students are interested in service learning. So they actually arrange service learning trips or service learning opportunities for students during their semester abroad as well. So that's something that a student can always talk to their advisor about.
Thank you. We're getting actually a good amount of questions about specific majors, specific, how do I make sure that I'm getting the right classes in? So could you talk through again or clarify how do these students, I mean, this is a pre-med question, but talking about specific majors, how can they get course approval ahead of time so that they can plan which programs they can apply for when they open?
So course approval is part of our application process. So that's something that they can definitely talk to their advisor about. But we want them before they complete their application to know that they're going to be courses that are going to work for them. So that is an important part for each and every application when we're looking through those. I will say for pre-med students, it's one of the things I like best about our programs is that because the courses come back as Emory credits, um, that really helps with med school applications. And even for pre-med students, I had a student who took his MCAT while he was in Paris. So we have a great number of ways of supporting pre-med students on these programs.
Thank you. Speaking specifically to the BBA experience, what tend to be the most difficult BBA programs to get into?
So this is a tough question because the last few years Spain has really been kind of the one, the Madrid programs tend to be kind of the high application, courses, London, Rome, Paris, but it's very hard to say because it shifts and it shifts frequently. So last year we had 12 students in spring put down Singapore Management University. And then this past semester, we only had four. So we had four spots at Singapore. So everyone who applied for Singapore got their spot there. So it's inconsistent, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of it depends on word of mouth, where students think is cool, or, where like groups want to go. So it can be, it can be hard to call, but at the moment, I would say the ones that are definitely where we have the most students applying to spring 24, we had 81 students apply to Madrid, and we had about 25 spots there. So I would say Madrid is the big one, then followed by London, Rome, Paris, um, those kind of places. But also like Lisbon's getting really popular. It's inconsistent. It's based on, it's I wish I had a crystal ball and knew where kids were going to apply, and it's funny, every spring it feels like Australia is going to be the hot point, and then I feel like kids maybe talk to their families and their families are like, oh god, no, don't go all the way to Australia. So and then some years Australia is really popular, so it's hard to know, but I would say definitely confidently I can say Spain is the consistent one. Madrid is the one where we have the most applications for sure.
It's partly about students speaking about their experience to their peers, and that I think plays into where students want to apply generally.
Mm-hmm. Do we need to register our child with the American consulate in the country where they are going to?
I'm happy to answer that. So our recommendation to Emory students is to register with the STEP program of the U.S. Department of State, which is the Smart Traveler program, and that enables that kind of serves two purposes. One is it lets the U.S. Department of State and the local embassy know that your student is there. And then the second aspect of it is that it allows students and anyone who registers to receive notifications, if there's a change in the local conditions, if there's, a specific weather alert, a large protest, that's all information that gets sent out by the nearest embassy and consulate. So absolutely, we don't make it a requirement for students to sign up for that, but it is a strong recommendation.
In addition to Oxford, England, what programs abroad focus on creative writing, or how can my student go about finding specific programs for their major?
Yeah, so for creative writing, specifically what comes to my mind immediately is Trinity. But I will say that there are some limitations for English majors. They really need to be studying, if they want to be studying English literature or writing, they need to be studying abroad in an English speaking country. So that gives us the UK and Australia.
Thank you. For the business school exchange program, how can a student plan to do such a program with a friend, also in the undergraduate business program, given how competitive it is and that it is an exchange program?
I think they just need to be open to maybe, multiple locations. So if they're trying to coordinate, I really want to travel with this friend of mine, they might say, The way we work our schools is we put them into groups. So group the first group is like the most popular schools we have, and students can pick one of those, and then the second group is like the second most popular set of courses, and then the third one is full of schools that are new schools, new programs, or ones that we haven't had as many students to apply to. So if a student's looking to like study with their friend, I would recommend that they pick the same schools in each location and be open to that. And then what you can do is if a student is like really like, look, I just want to have a global experience with my friend. I'm not, we don't need Madrid or we don't need this London program. We just want to go somewhere together. You can forego your first choice and second choice and pick the group three school and preference it as your first. And that's a really good way. And we had a lot of students do that this year and it really worked out. We've two students that went to Koç in Istanbul together, which is a school we hadn't sent students to in a long while, and they're having the best semester ever. I mean, we have a class that we teach while they're abroad, so we kind of check in with them, and just reading about their experience has been absolutely fantastic. So I think being open to some of the kind of lesser, I don't want to say lesser because I think some of them are fantastic and some of them are amazing academic skills as well. Like, I mean, we have, some absolutely fantastic, some of the best schools in Europe, like places like Maastricht, where you can literally walk to four countries in one day. It's one of the most idyllic locations in the world, in my opinion, but it's just maybe not, as Laura kind of, pointed out, the word of mouth is not there. Maybe there haven't been as many students go there in the past, but it should never take away from it in any way. So I think if they want to go with friends, I think they need to be open to, you know, maybe some of the, non-Madrids of this world or the non-Londons of this world, perhaps. But, in some cases, students do get to go to those places together. So I strongly advise, I offer a ton of advising appointments before the abroad process starts. I do information sessions. So I advise they come and speak to me, you know what I mean, and go through it. But that would be my advice, being open to an abroad experience, just doesn't have to be ICADE in Madrid.
Meg, I see you noted this as wanting to answer live. So, are there programs listed on the Emory College of Arts and Sorry, I misread that. Are the programs listed on the Emory College of Arts and Sciences semester abroad site classified as direct enroll or program provider?
So the reason I wanted to answer it live, because I think it's easier to explain. So the general rule is if it says University of, it's either going to be an exchange or it's going to be a direct enroll, and it'll indicate that in the program page. For a program provider, those oftentimes have acronyms ahead of them. So if you see a CIEE or an SIT or a CET, that's going to be a program provider program.
Thank you. So, since the students must pay tuition for the summer courses, is the semester that follows reduced in cost if the student is taking fewer courses as a result?
No, I mean the idea about taking summer is in addition to kind of academic year, enrollment. So they're not related. And as Meg stated, here in the college, we are working on a pilot for summer 2025 to actually provide more financial aid support for summer study abroad programs than what has previously been offered. So we're hopeful that that will help students. But the idea is not for students to take a summer study abroad and then take less classes in the following fall.
The student is on a full scholarship. How does that affect costs covered for semester programs outside of travel?
Yeah, so Emory works as a homeschool tuition model in the college specifically, which means that whatever their scholarships cover while they're here will continue to cover it while they're abroad. So, of course, there are some expenses outside of that. So, for example, visa fees or your airplane ticket. But generally speaking, those scholarships will transfer right over and work as they usually do during the semester.
Thank you. My son is working on the pre-med path, considering the very specific requirement for med school application. Is there any abroad program that is suggested specifically for med schools or pre-med students?
There's not a specific program. We have many programs that will work. It kind of depends on like what the student needs and where they are. So if they're needing their chemistry classes, we might have a specific recommendation. If they're needing something a little bit different, it really depends on the students themselves, but we have many different programs that will work for pre-med students.
Our son is interested in the London School of Economics summer program, which is endorsed by Emory. I have read that many summer programs are not taught by faculty of the actual university. Are faculty in these programs from the London School of Economics or from Emory? Or this might be applicable to multiple programs as well.
The majority of summer faculty-led programs are taught by Emory College faculty, but there are some where students are taking classes at an institution abroad, and I do believe that is the case with the London School of Economics.
Thank you. So another BBA question. Do BBA students who study abroad in the spring tend to stay for internships? Should they keep that in mind when looking for programs?
For sure, they can. It depends on the regulations around visas for the countries, but we have had students who have managed to connect with companies while in their countries, at networking events at their business schools, and there have been examples of students getting an internship abroad. Primarily, the countries where we've seen students get internships, or maybe like we had a few get them in Dublin through Trinity College, and then we had a couple that got them in Israel. More the kind of like where like English speaking is kind of the line, the business language. But yeah, no, students can definitely try that. It just obviously, you need to review the visa requirements of the specific countries, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely an option if you're if your child hasn't got an internship lined up yet, they could definitely do that. And it's the same for the students who come here. We're able to sponsor them to extend their visas should they wish, if they can secure we refer to it as academic training. But yeah, definitely, it's a possibility for sure.
All
And
right.
I just want to actually add off that. Sorry, I should have had.
No, you're good.
The BBA students will have full access to the CMC while they're abroad, which is Career Management Center. We have like a live Zoom link where students can like contact the CMC coaches or the CMC team if they have questions about interview prep or helping write cover letters, etc. While abroad. So if they're networking for a job while they're there, then yeah, definitely, they're still receiving as well the career support that we would offer them if they were here at Emory. I will just add one other thing is I have noticed with some of our BBA students, and obviously it's a wonderful experience to go abroad for the semester, but I get the feedback every year. And one of the things that I often see, and it's just something to maybe tell your child before going abroad, is they travel so much while they're abroad. So say they're in Paris, and then every weekend they're going to Prague, to Munich, to all these different cities around Europe. Or if they're in Sydney, they're going to New Zealand. They're going here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes they don't fully get the opportunity to maybe build their network in the location they are. So if they're looking at those internships, they maybe need to think about is this a semester where I just globe hop, or is it trying to develop myself professionally and look at my professional network, and perhaps look at jobs in those locations.
Thank you. We have gotten through most of the questions, which is really, really incredible. And thank you, Megan, Laura, in the chat answering all these questions. We have just a couple more. I believe we answered this question, but if you could answer it again. Is there a list of schools that support pre-med students?
So there is not a specific list, no. Again, because it's kind of a wide, varied coursework. So there's not a specific list, but they can look at the blanket approval list to see where students have taken pre-med courses in other countries. Oh no, I just saw the link for approved courses is not available. Let me I will send you the link to the page. And just know that it's the blanket approval database on that page.
Thank you, Meg. And then another question for the BBA program. Thank you for answering about the STEP program while abroad. Is this the same for the BBA program?
For sure, students can engage with that. The one that we primarily highlight is the ISOS. That's the one that we really do push on our students. It's a system that Emory has taken out and paid significant financial resources for having this. It's a alert system where if we have a student in a country, I get alerted about, hey, Declan, you have this student, and the student is also alerted. So the other day, we have a student currently in Seoul, South Korea. I got a notification. The student got a notification. It's not international health insurance, so it's not the same as like medical insurance, but it does cover emergencies such as like evacuation, of a student if they're in a place where they need to be evacuated from. It also includes what I really like about it is some of the medical support it offers. So if students can't find a doctor who can communicate in their language, ISOS can help. They also offer online counseling sessions, which is great. So it's a really good system. So that's the one we primarily, advertise, but students can also look at STEP for sure.
I think we cleared it. I think that's all. Is there any more? There's one more. For the BBA program, does the student need to have studied the language in the country the program is in?
No, no. Some schools have a preferred language requirement. So actually, some of our schools ironically in Spain, they sometimes like that students have got a little bit of Spanish proficiency. It used to be that every country had like a pre-orientation language class, and then BBA students kind of kicked back on this one. So some schools do like the language, but all of the classes that your child would be learning in are in English. So all of our programs operate their schools curriculums through English, so they don't need to, if they go to Paris, they're learning in English. The classes in Spain, they're through English. So yeah, you don't need to have obviously it's great to have knowledge in the language for the locals and for getting around on a day-to-day basis. And for that, I always advise students, do a bit of Duolingo before they go, or, have something, but there's not a specific requirement. Some countries have a preferred requirement, but it's not a precluding factor if they haven't ever studied the language that they can't go to a country. That's because, as I said, that the classes are in English.
Thank
On
you.
the topic of the language, I did want to add that for Emory College students who are studying abroad in countries where English is not the language, like the primary language, then Emory College students are required to take a language course. It can be introduction to Italian, or it can be introduction to the language. That's not, it doesn't matter what the level is, but students will be required to take that one language course. So just wanted to be clear about that as well.
Thank you. We have one more question that we'll ask, and then we will wrap up for the hour. But there was a question based on the financial aid information for summer 2025. So, will we know the aid amount for summer when we pay the deposit for summer?
So we are currently working, I mentioned the pilot that we're working on, and we are working with financial aid. This is one of the big things we're working on right now. We are, for your students, we are hosting a webinar on December 16th, where we are going to kind of lay out how summer financial aid is going to work for students. So definitely encourage your students to attend that webinar. But yes, absolutely. Our intent is to give students as much information as possible about how much the program will cost, and not just like the billable amounts, like how much will students pay to Emory for tuition and program fee, but also we want students to have a realistic idea of what the other costs are. So we are estimating on our budget sheets on our website for every program. We estimate cost of airfare, living expenses. We also take into account like every particular summer program is going to have like certain meals that are covered by the program. So we try to estimate for students like what are the costs that they should expect for that specific program that they are applying for. So yes, that is something that we're working towards. And as we mentioned, Meg mentioned that the summer 2025 Eagles Abroad scholarships, we are going to have two deadlines. And so, students will apply by February 1, and we would like to let students know by March 1 what scholarships they can expect. And then for students who apply by February 15th, we will let them know by March 15th what they can expect. So definitely encourage your students to apply early, especially if they expect to receive some scholarship funding.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Meg. And thank you, Declan, for spending time with us this afternoon, or morning, if you're in the West Coast, to answer all these questions for us and to provide all these resources to parents and families. I know it's really valuable. So we are going to wrap up with the Q&A, and I'm going to wrap up the webinar. But if there are any further questions, if y'all want to put your contact info in the chat so that families have it. I know, Meg, you may have already done that. And then I will share my email as well as family@emory.edu. I will share my screen for the last slide and the last little bit of info. All right. So again, thank you to our presenters and thank you to our audience for tuning in. We hope this was a session full of information and context to help you and your student better understand their opportunities for education abroad. We have reached the end of the fall semester, but we still have a few remaining opportunities for you to learn more before the winter break. So next week, we will be releasing a special pre-recorded webinar episode with our sorority and fraternity life team to tell you more about this experience at Emory. If your student has already registered for formal recruitment in the spring or is still considering it, this is a great webinar to tune into. Again, and all of this information and more will be available at family.emory.edu. And if you have any questions, my email is family@emory.edu. If you missed any of our presenters' contact info in the chat, you can always email me. I am happy to forward on any of your questions or information onto this team. But thank you again. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you, if not next week, then in the spring.